Happy 2021, Era Vulgara. I hope everybody is blissfully hungover and you didn't overdo it last night. I tell you, the neighbors here, it sounded like a war zone. I feel like the crabby old man, get your fireworks off my lawn. But anyway, it's over. It's 2021, and now it's up to us to make it better. I hope you took a little look at my late night oracle for 2021. I drew a tarot card last night, and everything is posted on my Facebook page here. Just scroll down and see what it is. I drew the Princess of Swords, who has, wonderful meanings of her own and everything else. And I have my own interpretation of, my own personal interpretation of what it means, but I was silent and allowed you to do your own interpretation. But the Princess of Swords, being the earth sub-element of air, is also a I Ching hexagram. That's hexagram 18, which is work on what has been spoiled. Sometimes it's called decay. And the judgment image of it is very straightforward in its advice. It's almost fortune cookie-ish in its simplicity. And I posted that on there too. What I found particularly interesting, that the aces and princesses also rule quadrants of space on the surface of the earth. And the swords, the ace and princess of swords, are assigned to the North and South America. The swords are mostly the Americas. The cups are the Pacific, and discs are Africa and Europe, and wands are Asia. So, I sort of took that as for people in the Western hemispheres to pay special attention to the specific attention to the divinatory meanings of both the I Ching and the Princess of Swords. So anyway, enough of that. We're reading, just beginning. I mean, we're still in the front end material of this. And for those of us that are anxious to get into the meat of it and everything else, you may find this introductory front material a little tedious, because this book is based on a great deal of scholarly research, of which I am just the most superficial of comber. But there was a lot of it a lot of research went into this, and a lot of researchers, and I needed to give them their full respect and acknowledgement. So please be patient while I read this front end material. Today, I'm going to read my preface to the 2019 edition. That's what this is. So I think the first edition was 2008. So, but anyway, I hope you'll find it entertaining anyway. Whenever I visit London, I never fail to make a pilgrimage to the Temple of History, that is, the British Museum. In my opinion, it is holy ground, a time machine, a vortex of human consciousness, and the material showcase of the Akashic records. I love it all, especially the endless, low-ceilinged catacombs of the basement. Constance and I really enjoyed the basement of the British Museum. Now we've got a couple stories to tell about that. The goddess Demeter goosed me down there. But that's another story. I'm particularly drawn to the Greek and Roman antiquities. The Babylonian and Assyrian exhibits are also monumentally awe-inspiring. They haunt my dreams for months after my visits. But as much as I'm drawn to the ancient stuff, I linger longest gazing upon a modest collection of articles from the more recent Elizabethan period of English history. An elaborately inscribed wax disc about 9 inches in diameter, and several smaller versions of the same. A beautiful gold medallion about 3 inches in diameter, and a black obsidian mirror mounted on an upholstered carrying case. In the mid-1980s, when I first came upon them, they were identified simply as, quote, magical objects of Dr. John Dee, circa 583. And they were tucked inconspicuously among furnishings and small household items of the period. In the years that followed, the collection moved several times, each time to more conspicuous displays. The articles now rest in a prominent display case of their own in the center of a first-floor gallery. It seems that interest in John Dee and his celebrated status as a mathematician, international spy for Queen Elizabeth, and model for Shakespeare's Prospero, has grown in the last 30 years. The items, which should be familiar to anyone who is even remotely interested in Enochian magic, are key elements and souvenirs of the most amazing magical adventure ever recorded. A beeswax siglum diameth, the design of which displays in figures and letters in an angelic hierarchy of heaven. The golden talisman, the design of which is a graphic index of the Great Table, home to an angelic chain of command that forms a structure of existence itself. The black obsidian magic mirror that served as Dee and Kelley's angelic viewing screen for nearly 3 years of meticulously recorded magical visions. Sometimes I wonder if John Dee and Edward Kelley ever gazed into that dark mirror and peered 400 years into the future. A future when their audacious efforts to tap the mind of God and communicate with angels would be studied, debated, analyzed, and imitated by magicians and spiritual adventurers the world over. A time when their attempts to directly assail the gates of heaven would be seriously examined, not as naive and superstitious Bible-inspired pretensions, but as serious psychodramatic techniques to access and exploit quantum levels of human consciousness. My own interest in Enochian magic began in the mid-1970s. By studying how the 19th century magicians of the Hermetic Order of the Golden Dawn, and later Aleister Crowley, applied parts of Dee and Kelley's system of angelic magic to their efforts to synthesize the various Hermetic sciences and create a sort of a practical universal field theory of Western occultism. My growing passion for the study was fortuitously well-timed because scholarship on the subject was just starting to blossom all around the world, and material that had slumbered in museum libraries untouched and unanalyzed and unpublished for 4 centuries suddenly became publicly accessible. Excuse me while I clear the Enochian frog from my throat. Special acknowledgement and praise should be made to the Enochian magic pioneers Jeffrey James, Joseph Peterson, Clay Holden, Robert Turner, Adam McLean, Jim Reeds, and Colin Wilson. Now, if I would have written this more recently, I'd have thrown in a few more. It soon became clear to me, and clear to us all, by studying the original 16th century documents, that Enochian magic as practiced by the Golden Dawn and Aleister Crowley, while being brilliantly exploited and developed, had only scratched the surface and tapped a tiny portion of the potential the system offered. The first edition of Enochian Vision Magic was my modest attempt to paint, in very broad strokes, a bigger picture of the circumstances of the reception of the material and the possible practical implications the technology could have for the modern spiritual explorer. Magic is a fascinating study. It's colorful, historic, dramatic, scary, and titillating. It's fun to read about magic and become a magician trivia expert. But the scholar focuses on the subject. The magician focuses on the magician. And magic in practice is more than an intellectual mastery of a colorful subject. Like yoga or Zen or Sufism, magic is a powerful, self-transformational art form capable of triggering profound changes in the consciousness of the practitioner. Since 1978, wow, my wife Constance and I have hosted Monday night magic class in our home in Costa Mesa, California. And that only was put on pause this last March, 1978. We regularly schedule a series of workshops on Enochian magic, practiced in a group setting. And year after year, the system itself teaches us more and more about itself. In fact, tonight, our living room will fill with a score of Enoka knots. Yeah, Enoka knots, who will begin the evening by sharing the results of their visionary homework assignments. And then together we will, as a group, penetrate the magical universe with a particular Enochian angelic intelligence. If you're interested in doing this in a virtual way, please look into subscribing to my recent 4 Zoom workshops. Okay. Everyone's visions, at least those who stay awake, will differ in many details, but most, if not all, will share uncanny parallels in the fundamental themes of their visions. Imagine if a botanist and a musician and a stonemason and a folklorist all went together on a tour of Ireland. The botanist's consciousness would be altered and elevated by the mystical auras of the flora. The musician would be transcendently crazed by the lively music at the pubs. The stonemason, inspired by the geologic and technical wonders of the stone architecture, and the folklorist might be captured by a leprechaun. But they'd all agree they were in Ireland. It's been 11 years since Enochian Vision Magic was first published. At that time, I've had the privilege to lecture around the world on the subject. I was even invited to present an all-day workshop in Krakow, Poland, at the Hotel Stary. Yeah, Stary, the Stary Hotel, S-T-A-R-Y. Sounds very Lovecraftian, doesn't it? Welcome to the Starry Hotel. Reportedly, it was the residence where Dee and Kelley lived and performed many of their angelic workings in the 1580s. These workshops were not simply lectures on the history of Enochian magic. Attendees become Enochian visionary magicians themselves and joined me in a scrying session of one of the 30 Enochian aethers. So far, everyone has lived through the experience, and I'm happy to report that quite a few of them have gone on to incorporate Enochian magic practices into their personal magical arsenal of tools. Since 2008, when this book was first published, a number of new and excellent books on Enochian magic have been released, which continue to enrich the practice and theoretical understanding of this marvelous system, including the works by Stephen Skinner, Jason Louv, Jason Augustus Newcomb, Aaron Lecht, and Dr. John DeSalvo. A new edition of Joseph Peterson's John Dee's 5 Books of Mystery, perhaps the most complete, essential original resource, will also soon be released, and I urge everyone who's interested in where and how Enochian magic first developed to get it and set it on the shelf in your library right next to this new edition of Enochian Vision Magic. And I'm going to quickly just read the note regarding original source material, and then we'll let you get on with your new year. The original Enochian material is a labyrinth of manuscripts. In preparing this book, I was fortunate to have at my disposal electronic files containing the photographic images of original material currently housed at the British Library, London. The manuscripts are numbered and designated by name of past owners. The ones I used for the present work are designated Sloan 3188, 3189, 3191, and Cotton Appendix 46, Parts 1 and 2. Within these numbered manuscripts are various books, or libers, bearing separate titles. These libers were copied by Kelley or others and reproduced in subsequent manuscripts, sometimes renamed, and have found their way to London's British Library and the Bodleian and the Ashmolean libraries at Oxford University. For my purposes, the material from the British Library's Sloan 388, 3189, 3191, and Cotton 46, Parts 1 and 2 proved to be quite sufficient. Digital scans of the Enochian manuscripts can be accessed electronically, and then I give the URL address that was at least active at this time. Enochian scholar Jeffrey James prepared a concise summary of breakdown of Dee and Kelley's manuscripts for the bibliography of his excellent book, Enochian Magic of Dr. John Dee. He has graciously allowed me to produce his entries for that material that relate directly or indirectly to Enochian vision magic. The reader who wishes to explore the source material in greater detail, or who simply wishes to track a book's footnotes and references, should find this list helpful. Then we've got we got 4 pages that look like that. Some of this material has been published in more modern times in books that are still readily available. Foremost of these are A True and Faithful Relation of What Passed for Many Years between Dr. John Dee and Some Spirits, and John Dee's 5 Books of Mystery. To make things a bit easier for the reader to access more readily available source material, I will, wherever possible, try to make references within the text and in notes to passages in these modern works. Okay, tomorrow I'm going to read you the prologue to the prologue. It's my own, and it's called Something Secret. And that's where we'll end it today. Gee, I hope you had a good New Year's Eve last night and were safe and sane in your behavior. I hope you weren't on my lawn last night blowing up things, God damn it. Anyway, continue to be good to yourself today and all year long. Be good to yourself and be good to each other. Do what thou wilt shall be the whole of the law. Love's the law, love under will.